Actually, I would say the difference between an assault and a charge really lies in like what the end goal is. So like I think an assault has to do with like you're probably going to end up in some sort of form of a charge, but you're not interested in the unit, you're interested in the position it holds, whereas a charge is all about the enemy unit, I guess.
hmm Well, welcome everybody to this special episode of Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel with Lord Hugs, who is arguing semantics quite well, I imagine. The difference between an assault and a charge. And you are looking at Pickett's charge. Today is the anniversary of Pickett's charge, and we have set up what looks like, it's K22 System, and I'm going to use the K22 System to resolve Pickett's charge. It's really an academic experiment. I don't expect that it's going to work necessarily well, but we'll see if we produce a historic result, which would be an above par. I don't know, that'd actually be below par if we're using golf terminology. That would be a better than expected outcome.
Yeah, but who plays golf, realistically speaking?
A lot of people do, man. A lot of
Oh my
people.
god,
Oh
most
my
boring
gosh.
sport.
Yeah. Pebble Beach? Oh my god, it's beautiful. Anyway, been there, got to knock a golf ball there even into the ocean. But anyway, neither here nor there. Um, the some caveats here before we get into this. Obviously, K22 is a Napoleonic system. Things are a little different. The unit sizes are a little different from the American Civil War. American Civil War weaponry is more lethal. The tactics are a little bit more effective. So it's kind of different. So K22, as it's written, which is a Napoleonic system, does not port very well over to the American Civil War. However, a K22 system for the American Civil War is planned. And this is sort of a preliminary test to see how it works. And it's about mining data, I suppose. And so that's what we're going to do here today is we're going to collect some data and kind of have some fun. And since Lord Hugs is here, fun is assured, whether you like it or not.
Oh, whoa, 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 whoa! Don't put me on the
hmm
spot.
Yeah, I know, right? A lot of pressure, isn't it? All right, I've opened the room and the lobby to anybody in the IKS who wants to join the room or the table, and so we might have people who pop in, and if they do, they might pop in and say random things at first,
You know,
but
I will point off a
like Lord
little.
Hugs.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I will point out a little historical thing in regards to Pickett's charge. Is people will give the Confederates a lot of crap for Pickett's charge, but what people seem to forget is that the Union did a similar thing at Fredericksburg and Marie's Heights, and it was probably like double the
hmm
casualties or something like that. I don't know, it was insane. So I mean, was it really that far fetched? Probably not. Like,
No, I mean, I'll pause for a moment to give a little bit of a lecture here. When you put yourself in Lee's shoes, and there was actually this website. I don't know if it was American Battlefield Trust or someone who did it, but it was kind of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing, and it puts you in Lee's shoes at Gettysburg and making the decisions that he had to make. And it's really for kids, for teenagers who don't know the battle. Us armchair generals and historians, we would know, well, of course you don't do that, right? Well, the thing is, when you frame it from kind of this outside perspective and you think about the data that Lee had, for example, every time he had fought the Union Army, he had more or less whipped them. There were some exceptions, certainly,
and the center was
Antietam,
always the weakest.
yeah, Antietam being the one. But the historic precedent was, look, when we go mano a mano, man to man, we kick their butts, we cream them. So there you have that. Second, we have the biggest massed artillery, Grand Battery, probably since Waterloo, is going to open up on the Federals and just pound the crap out of them and make them crap themselves, for lack of a better term. And then we're going to take, 15,000 men, which was actually less in real life, but we're going to take more than 10,000, probably like 12,000 men or something, and we're going to charge
It's
across
along
this
the lines of what it
ground.
was.
And even if, we take significant casualties, we're going to break their center. And then once we do that, then we just rip up the rest of the army. And once they suffer that defeat, that's the end of the war. So I don't need to worry about what happens the day after or the day after, because this is the end of the war right here. It ends right here if I go all in. So if you're General Lee, how do you not go all in? I mean, I would have a harder time sleeping at night or justifying my decision to not go all in. So it's kind of like Lee was sort of kind of channeled into this course of action by all of the information and knowledge that he had. I don't think it was such a terrible decision on his part. Of course, it
Well,
was, because
there was some
mathematics were stacked up against him, but he didn't know these things. He didn't have all the data, you know.
there was some historical precedent, you could say, or precedent,
Uh,
you could say, for his decision making. I mean, and like you said with the whole all in thing, this is what, day 3 of Gettysburg, right?
yeah, yeah,
Pickett's charge, yeah. So he was already 2 days into this battle. It's like I said, it's almost impossible not to go all in at this point, because you're already kind of all in, especially after day 2 of Devil's Den attack. I mean, like you're kind of in the fight now. So it's either you win or you don't. There is no like, all right, let's get out of here at this
yeah.
point.
And for the army
And
to
then
retreat would have been disastrous, you know.
exactly. So, and then the second thing is Lee historically always attacked the flanks and did a probe. The Union sent all their troops to the flanks, and then he did a massive center attack, and then boom, wins. Right. So he's kind of trying to do the same thing here, except that marching over open ground towards a whole battery of guns isn't exactly the smartest idea. Even
No,
for the day,
I
but
mean, but again, look at his perspective. There's always going to be hazards on the battlefield. There's always going to have artillery pointed at you and firing at you when it gets real. So
yeah,
that can't deter you from taking an action. Yes, there's going to be casualties, but ultimately, the weight of numbers and the quality of your tactics and the elan vital of your force is going to overwhelm the enemy, who should be weakened and battered and tired and ready and willing to just give way under a determined assault. And that was the logic of the time, I feel, from my perspective, and what understanding I have, which is far from perfect,
there
but
there really wasn't any other avenue of attack either, if you really think about it. Like the flanks were already tried, and at this point, outmaneuvering the Union was out of the question because all the reserves that Lee had were pretty much tied up elsewhere. So they're really without exposing entire gaps of his line to go outflank the Union, which they probably would have saw anyways and repositioned accordingly. There really was no other option. This was the Lee's gamble, but he was kind of forced into it.
yeah.
I think day 2 was really the day that was going to decide the battle. To be honest.
Hmm. Well, all right, let's get going with the test. So I have my K22 rules open because even though I wrote the darn rules, I don't remember all of my own rules. I have these open. I've put out some artillery dice because I imagine that's what we're going to open with here. And we're going to begin. Lord Hugs is going to command the Confederates, and he gets to give one order, which is attack. Do you want to give the order? What do you want to do?
Um,
What do you want to
hold
do,
on, hold on.
Hugs?
I gotta do a good quote. I do this under protest.
All right.
that that was a Devil's Den thing, but whatever.
All right, Lord Hugs. Well, up into your post, sir. All right. Okay, well, we're going to count that as an order to attack. So we're going to begin, and you get 5 minutes of movement, which puts you out into the open here. And actually, no, there's complications, right? You're in formation, you're moving cross country, so you actually only move here. So you get about half movement there. And
Where's the Confederate artillery? Is this assuming that the bombardment already happened?
yeah, this is the actual assault,
Oh,
basically. So
well,
we've got
one
this movement here.
Another thing that also slowed down the Confederates is they had to march through their batteries. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We're gonna give them a pass on this. Okay, so now Union artillery is gonna open up, and we're gonna assume most of these are heavier guns. So I've got 1, 2.5 batteries, and there's actually quite a lot more. I think. Um, oh man, if I had room on the map to scale this down with greater precision, I would have had like I don't know how many batteries I put it in there. In the I totaled the batteries, 23 RD blocks. If I so it's just insane the number of blocks I would need, and it's actually more than 23 RD blocks. It's because I would be using a lot of these half batteries and gun sections because there was quite a
Hey,
few of those. But
I'm
23
out of some family
batteries
real quick,
worth.
but
Go
I'll
ahead.
be right back.
All right, Hugs. All right, so let's go ahead and start checking some dice here and see what happens. All right, we've got a battery here. So let's take a look at our rules here. And we have. So one of the issues is battery size. Artillery. Where did I put my rule on the battery size? Because here we go. Foot artillery +1 when firing unopposed arty die. Okay, so the bonus is a +1 DRM when firing unopposed RD die, meaning 2 blocks like it has. Okay, alright. So let's make sure, let's see if we're in range, which I'm pretty sure we are. Let's see here. Actually, I need the other ruler, don't I, for that? Here's my RD ruler. It's my movement ruler. We'll flip it. Okay. And right here, I'm going to say, well, we do have some trees here which mask the approach, but remember we're simulating a much larger number of guns that are actually spread out. So we're going to go ahead and give him 1 die, and he's right at the edge, so we'll target this unit here, and we will do, let's just do 1 die with no bonuses and take it as it is, take the result. So we're going to go ahead and roll. Alright, and that is target retreats. Okay, and alright, good enough. Alright, so when a target retreats in the K22 system, it comes back 400 paces. So let's just put that out there to get a rough approximation, and it takes a level of disruption. Now, it does not take a loss per se, which is a permanent impairment to its fighting ability, but a temporary one. However, the block will continue forward. Uh, Alright, so here we have these two. Now, normally in Napoleonic rules, the AC or the K22 system, you don't get to fire through their units. I don't think I actually have that written in the rulebook anywhere. But no, they didn't fire over the heads of their troops. I just kind of figured that's assumed knowledge. American Civil War, it started to get a little different. They did fire over the heads of troops. In this case, I'm going to allow it because there's also some elevation as well and other things involved. And again, these batteries are simulating larger formations of guns that are actually scattered across the front. So this battery here will fire at these 2 blocks here, and that means they're each going to throw 1 die. Okay, and we're going to take the die result as it comes. No modifiers. Alright, no effect, and target falls back. Okay, so on this one here, no effect, so he'll continue. This one here, he'll fall back. Now, a fall back is 200 paces, but because there's another unit there, he has to fall back through that one. But he does not take disruption. It's like they fall back in good order. So you can see that, it's a little unsatisfying in terms of, well, that's not very historic. But remember, this is a tremendous abstraction of things that are happening across the entire line. So it's not really this one unit is falling back unrealistically back here. This is an abstraction of the chaos and the problems, men who are stopping and are not continuing the assault in the center. So it's sort of like an aggregate of all of the chaos and things that are going on. So that's what's simulated here, because we simply don't have the ability to go down to those individual units and blocks and simulate that. And even within those individual blocks and units, if you were able to say we're going to go down to the actual company level, perhaps even, which would be incredible to be able to do that. It would be a lot of work. The company continues on, but there are men who are dropping out all along the way for a variety of reasons. All right, let's take this battery here. This battery here, let's go ahead and put fire here on what is technically Pickett, and we're going to fire on these two units. So we're just going to, just to be a little more generous, we're going to adjust those there. Let's take a look now at our ruler, and it looks like we're pretty far out there. So at that range, what is my, let me check my artillery. At between 15 and 2,000 paces, roll 2 dice, apply the least result. Alright, so we're definitely, oh no, we're not between 15, we're at 12. Let me see here. Well, yeah, we're under 15. Roll 1 die, apply the result. Okay, so 1 and 1. So again, we're taking it straight here in this case. Alright, it is what it is. Let's roll it. Okay, no effect on that one. And then this one here, we have target routed. Okay, so no effect on this unit, but this one here is routed. So he's going to fall. He's basically knocked out. In fact, we flip it. We do this to it. Again, this is a Napoleonic system. It's not gonna, it is not going to work the same way as you would expect an American Civil War system to work. Okay? So yeah, it's really ridiculous, right? You have one unit routed, the other unit's unscathed. Come on. But that's kind of how it works here. And again, this is an approximation. So some of the troops have been routed from this entire formation. This block just represents that number of troops. Okay, that's one turn. The turn is done. Let's go ahead and do another turn. So all these units here are capable of moving, and there's nothing preventing that. They are reduced by half of their movement because they have complications, meaning they're in formation and they're moving cross country. So that reduces their movement down to about 200 paces versus 400. Now you could say, well, wouldn't they be moving at like, the quick step or something? They could be, and we could go ahead and push them up a little further if we wanted to. So I'm going to kind of reserve that for this last little stretch here. At first, I don't think you would start out moving that quick because you have a lot of ground to cover. But here we have it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and also move here. Now, actually, we're going to move these guys to about here. And these guys are going to take a big slowdown to their movement. They're only going to get like 1/4 movement. They're moving through an orchard. Their ranks are going to come apart. Actually, if I were in charge, I would guide around the orchard. I don't know if that's what they did historically or what, or if they passed through it. I don't know. All right, but anyway, here we are. Let's check the YouTube real quick to see if there's any questions or comments. Otto says, as someone from Europe, I find it interesting how much American people tend to analyze and nearly obsess over single battles of the American Civil War. It is, and it's a big part of our cultural identity and our history. It is a big deal here in the United States. Why that is, I don't know. It could be that maybe, the 1860s, the battle's a little more fresh, and it was a very traumatic event for the United States, incredibly traumatic. So there's a lot to it. Plus, there's a lot of historical records and documentation things that don't exist for battles that were further back in time. Um, and I'm throwing out some guesses here. But yes, it is a big deal. Everybody knows who their Civil War ancestors were. Then you don't know your ancestors after, up until like your grandparents or great grandparents. And that's true with me. I actually know them. But yeah, we all know our Civil War ancestors. So there you go. My Civil War ancestor was in the 10th Mississippi. Um, so he's buried in East Texas. Anyway, let's continue. Okay, battery. So this one here, are we going to? We're gonna shoot. Okay, so he's under 1200. Let's see what the rules say for under 1200. Roll one die. No, wrong table. This table. Between 1,000 and it helps if we flip the ruler to the correct side. Okay, there we go. Let's see here. Okay, so when I scroll on that my rule book, it zooms in and zooms out here. Sorry, that's annoying. Here we go. Between, well, let's determine the range. Let's say we're gonna fire on. That's 1,400 paces approximately. Roll 2 dice, apply the least result. All right, let's just do that. That poor fellow there, he can. Let's see what happens. Roll 2 dice and apply the least result. So this gun, this battery, is firing on this block here. And target routed and target falls back. The least result is target falls back. So once again, it represents that a group of troops in this approximate region of the line are pushed back. Okay. Let's take a look here at the center. Now here in the center, things are going to start getting serious. We're not yet in musket range, but we are in under 1,000 paces. So between 500 and 1,000 paces, roll 2 dice. Apply the greatest result. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to apply 4 dice. We're going to fire on this block and this block. We're going to fire on those 2 blocks. Actually, is that second block in that range? Oh, he's outside of it. All right, let's take the 2 lead blocks. Do it that way. Okay, come on now. I want a good roll. Come on. There we go. All right, we're going to take the greatest result. So target retreats and no effect. All right, so this target retreats, meaning he's going to back up 400 paces. And he's going to take a disruption. All right, we'll mark that. All right. And that's a retreat, not a rout. So retreat is not a loss. It's just a disruption, right? What is my rule on that? I don't want to cheat myself. Combat results. Retreat. Yep, 1. Okay, I did it correctly. All right, perfect. Okay, this block right here. No effect, and target retreats. All right, so here we have this situation where the lead elements are being pushed back. All right, here we are. So the lead elements are crumpling under the weight of fire. And then these 2 here will fire on, right here, I suppose. They'll fire on the Rogers farm. And we've got, again, now let's check the range. Our range, now they're outside of 1,000. So let's check my table. Again, I need a table for this stuff, don't I? That's the next player aid I'm going to have to create here for the module. Between 1,000 and 1,500, roll 1 die, apply the result. So 1 and 2, and we'll both target this lead unit here. So we're going to get both results. Target falls back and target retreats. All right, so.
All right, I'm back. What'd I miss?
Well, the front of the line continues to crumple.
Oh.
And
wow.
We're going to apply double disruption here.
Oh.
just because he was actually fired on by 2 batteries. Now, I could make a case that he had some kind of cover or whatever. We're just going to make that so. Okay, so there you go. There's the second turn now processed. Let's go with the third. All right, so these units all move up here. So it looks like they're not making a lot of progress here. They get up to this line and then they get thrown back. Let's see here. We're going to move him. I guess we'll move him there. Move him about there. Move them about there.
Oh, I'm getting a little bit of a flashback to Grand Gettysburg because this is my sector where the Union was at.
Well, there you go. All right, so here again, we're gonna target. Ooh, man, this is tough. We'll target this unit here, and we're going to. It's starting to shape up. However, there's no way the Confederacy is going to get through here. No, absolutely no way.
Yeah, the question is though, is it working too good?
No, the system definitely is going to need some tweaks and changes and such. But I think mostly it's in the realm of scale. I don't have nearly enough blocks for the Confederates, even though this represents more or less what they had. The scale isn't right. So each of these blocks in K22 is 450 men, a half battalion. So that means 2 blocks should represent a Civil
brigade.
War. Yeah, well, a regiment or whatever.
Oh,
right?
regiment.
Yeah. So, or maybe it is a brigade. I don't remember, but a big formation, 1,000 guys. I think that's a regiment, but that's a
1,000 men
regiment.
in the early days of
Yes.
the Civil War was a regiment. 1,000 men in 1863
would be a brigade,
right?
probably.
Or was it 63 or 64 that Gettysburg was?
So what I have here,
that was more along the lines of like a brigade.
Yeah. So what I have here is each block more or less represents a brigade. So I think I've got like 12 brigades or something out here for the Confederates, which is more or less what they had historically. But the number doesn't translate, and the frontages certainly don't translate. So it's like, okay. Again, it's going to require a lot of thought. I think the system itself is quite elegant and works very well, but to port it over to American Civil War, it's going to take a lot of tweaking. Okay, let's take a look here. Let's go ahead and roll now. Now we roll this one here, right? This battery is going to fire here. We're going to roll 2 dice for sure. And the question is, what results are we taking? We're taking, well, it's target retreats. So he's going to just back up here. And we're going to apply double disruption. And
you know what?
Disruption is a modifier if they end up in combat. Go ahead. What's that?
So it's a bit weird. I completely forgot that the Union has. Oh, let me pull up the Union order.
Order battle. Gosh darn it! I messed up the dice. All right, we'll re-roll it. All right, it looks like a no effect and a retreat. All right.
All right, so Pickett actually had 3 brigades, and each one had roughly 2, 4, 5. Had 5 regiments in each, and then the artillery battalion accompanying it. So it's 3 brigades with 5 regiments each.
Yeah. All right, and then this unit here. All right. I can see right now that the system is not working for this because the units are being thrown back. Retreat. See, so they can't even get within 800 paces of the artillery. So it could be that I'm making artillery too powerful here. Could be what it is. But I also think it's a matter of having too few blocks to represent the Confederate force.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of 3 things really. So, like you said, the artillery being a little too powerful, and the not enough blocks to kind of disperse the damage, right? / cohesion loss. But I think another thing that was special to this moment was the fact that these are a bunch of old Virginians, and they had like they had their dander up basically. Like they had really exceptionally high morale for this attack.
Hmm.
which is something specific to this like part of the battle.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well,
that kind of played a little bit into why they were able to close the distance as much as they did.
yeah. Well, I'm running the game with rules as written, more or less. So
Right, right,
the
right,
only
right. This doesn't
modification
take
I've
into account.
allowed is I'm allowing Union artillery to fire over the heads of these guys, which if you
Gotcha.
do fire overheads, there should be a negative
Well,
modifier for that, you know.
historically, it should be more like this.
Exactly. That's
With
why I'm
the
allowing it
yeah,
because actually there's a whole bunch of batteries. Like I said, I figured I would need 23 blocks to accurately represent the number of guns that they actually had on the field. And yeah, they were all over the place. There were a few in reserve, but most of them were just they were just
and they were
interspersed.
mixed in
So these are
with the line.
approximations of where they had kind of concentrations of guns. I've put blocks. But yeah, it's a lot, and I wonder if I were. I really think I would have to nerf artillery by about 50%, or bump the Confederates by 50% to get this looking a little bit more historic. But the other thing is, even without the artillery, once they get up here, and you get up here, let's say you get up here with line versus line. Well, these guys are going in for melee combat, and these guys here, so you already have, the Confederates probably being outnumbered. One, two, three, 4 blocks here to 3 blocks here. I don't know. What if we make it even odds? If we go with even odds, and then of course, well, we can't because then they're flanked here. Oh man, it's a mess for the Confederates. But if we do this, and let me change the color here. I'm just doing an experiment now. Now we're playing with the data. If we do that, then we say both of these forces are roughly equal. Actually, no. This one here is also in. We got standard here on the flank, and I just wonder if I include him or what. Let's take him out because I got so many other things going on over here. But let's say we have even and even. So combat value here is 20, combat value here is 20. But then we have a couple modifiers. We've got the battery here, so that's +1, +2 to the roll. So it's an even die roll with the +2 for the Union. Union will be designated superior because they have higher combat value overall, or higher whatever, more blocks. And then we do that, and then we rotate to +2, and we get a no effect, which means they then close. Oh, actually, it's they all take disruption because they're close range. So we just put all these disruption tokens on them. We'll just put a couple to mark it. But they're all disrupted at this point. And that's assuming the Confederates are able to fire back. And I forgot the stone wall. How do I forget like the most important feature of the position, right? So if I do stone wall, I would give Union another DRM at least, which still is no effect, but I would actually think the real result would probably be no, not both fall back.
I think this is one
But
of those moments where the dice kind of don't represent what should be actually happening. So I think this is one of the
mm-hmm,
moments where the umpire should probably like interject and say, you know what,
mm-hmm,
given everything that's happening here,
yeah,
regardless of what the dice say, these guys would probably either fall back or at least stay and fight but take penalties.
right.
Uh,
Well,
which
like
would actually it would probably be stay and fight and take penalties.
if we
Because they historically they did manage to get to the walls and they fought it out for a little bit, but
yeah, if we don't apply disruption, is if instead of a DRM we say, well, we won't apply disruption, and then that allows them to roll the orange die on the next exchange, and then we still give them a +2 on the orange die, then yeah, the Confederates will be routed almost certainly. The inferior falls back, so once they fall back from this, they're not going to make it again. If they close in and do melee, so now we roll the melee die, and let's see, the melee die, everyone takes a loss. automatic. And then we roll the die, and both are going to fall back. So you would have both sides kind of falling back with losses. So everybody would go to, we'd move in the exchange blocks, which would be these 5-6 blocks, which I'm not going to mess with it here. But then there should ideally be another line of reserves. So in order to translate K22 to the American Civil War, we need blocks that represent much smaller formations of troops, and you would have a lot more blocks. So that's kind of what has to happen. I think that's kind of the big thing. I think the artillery rules is written. The artillery is pretty powerful, and it almost needs to be nerfed by about as much as 50%. But that's also
I would
it
I
could
would say
actually
that
be solved by the blocks. Maybe the artillery doesn't need to be nerfed, and I just need more blocks.
I would say that artillery should be nerfed, even if you I don't know, if you add more blocks, maybe not so much, but I still think that in the current configuration it should be nerfed. And I think artillery should be nerfed overall in any system, because artillery, it does do damage, don't get me wrong, especially in canister range. But if you look even like, so for example, if you watch the movie Gettysburg and stuff, you see the guys crossing the field. I know that's not like a perfect example of what probably would have happened, but yeah, it's a movie, right? But I mean, it's still, you can see like guys getting knocked out of formation, stuff like that, and it does damage. And historically, artillery did chew up the Confederates. But what really decided it wasn't the artillery per se; it was the infantry that met them after they had to cross the field disorganized.
Yeah.
So they didn't exactly fall back, but they got here rattled up and disorganized. And then because of that, the infantry on the stone walls, stuff like that, and then coupled with some canister shots from the artillery, just completely made them fall back after that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, artillery was the number one cause of death on the Napoleonic battlefield. Now, probably
right, and
not overall, disease was probably number one, but on the battlefield, artillery was basically king.
But one thing that people don't look at is the fact that for artillery to be king, artillery fired for hours, right? So it was damage over time versus like damage up front immediately.
Yeah.
At least for most artillery engagements. Now, if you're talking canister, yeah, it's a bit different. Canister kind of destroys everything. So, but as far as how deadly artillery is, it was over time in a lot of cases.
Yeah. Well, it's go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, using Gettysburg as an example again, that big pre-Pickett's charge bombardment, which ironically starts in an hour and a half, 160th anniversary of it today, really didn't do a lot of damage to the Union artillery or the Union infantry. I mean, that was supposed to be the softening up, but it didn't really do much at all pre-Pickett's charge at all.
Yeah. Well,
I think a lot of that had to do with the fortifications, though, because the Union artillery did do damage to Pickett when he was crossing the open field.
Oh, without a doubt.
But it didn't quite do it as much as the K22 system shows it here. It really did a lot of disruption, and don't get me wrong, there was a lot of casualties from the artillery fire. But overall, when you're talking about the entire division, it did manage to get to the walls, albeit disrupted. And then it was the infantry with canister that threw them back. That's what did it.
They recently did a study on the battlefield using metal detectors and the burial maps, all kinds of crap. And they determined that the biggest impediment to Pickett's charge was the double fence along the Emmitsburg Road, because they had to stop, climb over, dismantle,
cut it down. Yep.
And then it was like the minute they took their first few steps from it, that's where your canister hit, all your musket fire hit. That's where Pickett's charge received most of its casualties. And the irony is, Armistead's brigade made it right to the stone wall and over it. There was just nobody behind them to follow through.
Yeah, and they probably knew the range to that road, to that fence line.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, without a doubt. If you're an artillerist and you are worth your pay, you know that range to that.
So that kind of adds to the to what I'm trying to say here, where artillery firing solid shot, especially Napoleonic, it does damage, but it does damage over time, because a lot of accounts of Napoleonic battles specifically can attest to the fact that the artillery fired for hours on end and the sound was deafening.
Mhm.
That's why artillery was king, because they just kind of rolled up guns and then kept shooting for the entire duration of the battle, almost.
And that was the whole thing with Napoleon's strategy, the grand battery, softening up that point, to that you want to go into. I mean, that's how he made his fame. Remember Wellington? He said Napoleon moves his artillery around like a pistol. Yep.
Yep. I want to acknowledge a couple comments that are coming in on the Discord. First of all, real quick, I do want to say hi. This is Vindictus to everybody, one of the new members, but he's a long-time player. So hello, and welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel, Vindictus.
Thank you very much.
And McKay says, wouldn't Waterloo be a better test? And you're correct, McKay. It would be a better test because K22 is a Napoleonic system. However, I want the data. I kind of want the failed experiment, if you will, which I don't know if you can. I mean, I don't know if a failed experiment is really a failed experiment if you learn from it, but somebody who is more of a philosopher scientist like John could tell me that. Yeah, I'm trying to kind of just glean information that will inform how I craft the K22 ACW rules. So this is kind of just a fun way to test it. And yeah,
here's a good contrast between Civil War and Waterloo. At Waterloo, the soft ground made a big difference between the effectiveness of what the artillery was and what it could have been. Had it not rained the night before the way it did, that big deluge, you would have had all the bouncing of the solid shot.
And skipping rounds intentionally to increase range.
Right, and they couldn't do that during Waterloo. So one of the things you have to consider, at least on the Napoleonic side, is weather. On the Civil War side, I've never heard anything about, oh yeah, the weather was so bad that the balls weren't bouncing. And I think that's because during the Civil War, they were using a lot more explosive type shells that exploded overhead, I think.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
most
shots weren't even K shot. It was still solid shot. Most of the cannons that the Confederacy had, for example, were the 12-pound Napoleon that fired solid shot smoothbore, right? So they were still using Napoleonic era stuff. But one of the things that both sides did have were the 3-inch ordnance, and they were rifled, of course, and that was like the most common rifled artillery piece around. But even then, they still fired solid shot a lot as well.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, they did still use like K shot, and a couple other experimental ones. But overall, the king of the Civil War was still solid shot.
Yep.
But the thing that kind of defines Civil War artillery over Napoleonic isn't that it was. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong; it was more deadly per se. But I think one of the reasons why it was more deadly is because the range was increased.
Yes. It was the age-old dilemma of where, the range of the muskets and the cannons increased while they were still using Napoleonic tactics to go in, roughly.
And the rifle thing, so it was more accurate. So I think one of the things that another thing that made Civil War artillery more effective over Napoleonic artillery was because ACW cannoneers could actually aim the guns better. Like there wasn't. I mean, it was still a chance for random, randomization in where the projectile was going, right? But overall, across the board, they had a more likely chance of hitting what they were actually aiming at. Whereas in Napoleonic, everything was smoothbore, right?
Yep.
So it was kind of like, okay, we're going to aim in this general direction, and the thing that made experienced cannoneers better than non-experienced ones was they had a better idea of guessing where the ball was going to go.
Yep. And also something else to keep in mind is that during the American Civil War, the tactics changed right after Gettysburg, where they started using more fortifications to the point where by 1865, if you look at some of the battles, I mean, extensive siege works and trenches and stuff at Spotsylvania and Petersburg, where I forget who said it here online, said artillery was accumulative, especially during the last 2 years of the war when you're dealing with all those fortifications. Most definitely.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I think this kind of concludes our experiment. Obviously, K22 does not work very well for the American Civil War, not the Napoleonic rules as written. And we've had this really cool conversation as to a why. And I think all of these factors that have been mentioned here by Vindictus and Hugs definitely come to bear. And it's not going to be as easy as I thought it was going to be to revise the rules. It's going to take some time and some careful thought and planning. Um,
Well, here's something that may make it easier. Isn't the second set of the Kriegsspiel rules that were written later on? I thought I read somewhere where they said those rules did all kinds of adjustment to the
uh-huh.
fire tables for the more modern weapons.
Yeah, they actually revised the rules over and over and over. There's at least 3 or 4 systems that I know
the
of.
the problem is getting it to where it's not an absolute headache to resolve
Yeah,
artillery
yeah.
fighting. Like that's a we're trying to go for like a good balance between simplicity and realistic outcomes.
Right, because
Yeah,
we're playing it as a game rather than a training exercise. The audience is not captive cadets who are forced to play for 2 or 3 days until the scenario is complete.
And
It's
that
yeah,
is one thing that
I
kind of limits what we can do is the fact that
yeah,
battles took a long time. So to
yeah.
account for all this stuff, like we're trying to cram it into smaller segments of time,
Hmm.
both in game time and out IRL time. So I think time limitations is what's like. So for example, artillery is more effective over time, but we don't have 8 hours of a day to
Right,
simulate like 4 hours of artillery firing in game. You know, it's just like it's not possible unless you do a
wasn't
play by post.
what
But then play by posts take like months in that case. Like look at Chancellorsville, that was simplified and it took like 5 months, 4 months, something like that. It was
what
ridiculous.
was
yeah.
what was the second that version that came out? I think in the 1860s by Prussia of Kriegspiel, the one that I was referring to.
I think it's called
I
Von
don't.
Taschwitz.
Yeah, yeah. Where they said they not only adjusted the fire tables for 1860s style, right, rifles and cannons, but also I thought I read somewhere where they streamlined it to make it go faster and not get bogged down as much in the rules, that it was less complicated. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm getting it backwards. But I know I definitely read where they adjusted the fire tables.
Yeah, Taschwitz is 62.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I just had to verify because I've got these mixed up before. I didn't want to. Better to check. measure measure twice, cut once, right? But yeah, and yeah, and in the K22 system, I tell people, modify things to taste if you need to. This is not like these games where the designer's going to be upset with you because you change a rule that they wrote. On the contrary, the entire purpose of this exercise is to have fun. That's why we're here. We're here because we enjoy it. If you're not having fun because of a rule, change the rule. And if you're still not having fun, then play something else. The entire point is to have a good time. And the way we do it here, my kind of approach is this: is we don't have a lot of time to crank these games out, but we can preserve what makes Kriegsspiel fun, which is the double-blind, umpired fog of war play with delayed order implementation and dispatches and stuff. That's Kriegsspiel. That's literally free Kriegsspiel. But we, of course, introduced dice and tables, so we go back towards the original. So we take Verdi von Wahl free Kriegsspiel, we add in tables and charts and other things, dice to create objectivity again, to ensure objectivity, because none of us have the expertise to just say, oh, that would produce 200 casualties. Well, how do we know? We aren't veterans of the Franco-Prussian War. But this approach works really well. It's a heck of a lot of fun. I think even Vindictus, you were saying yesterday that you were hooked on this. And yeah, it's a powerful drug. Getting
It is.
you
It
know,
is. It's totally new and different and realistic experience to the point of being incredible.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, how many games have you played so far?
That was the first one, but it was an eye opener because I've played every type of war game, from war games with miniatures to board games to computer. I mean, you name it. And although I've been experimenting with Kriegsspiel for a couple of years, I've only played it twice against my wife, one for Gettysburg, one for Waterloo. But we didn't have an umpire, so we were doing a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, kind of making drastic adjustments.
Hmm. Hmm.
But what I was going to also say is that what really blew me away was that fog of war is just so realistic, and the dispatches,
Mm-hmm.
those things are what's lacking from practically every game except maybe Scourge of War with their dispatch system, but that's another
Hmm.
topic. And just to reiterate what I was saying earlier, the 1862 tick switch Kriegspiel rules.
Uh-huh.
It says they were pretty much very much the same as Reiswitz's 1824, and all they did, like I said earlier, was they incorporated the new advances in technologies and tactics. Transition from muskets to breech loading, rifles to, et cetera, et cetera. But everything else was pretty much the same.
I kind of want to make a final comment on what you said about the realism and stuff like that, because one thing that I always love, right, about this Kriegspiel in general is that a lot of armchair generals out there keep saying, well, in this battle I would have done this differently, or oh, that's a stupid thing, or like, oh, this I would never do this, and then you put them in a scenario uh, with the exact same information that they do, because they don't know what's going on with the whole
Yep.
double blind thing, fog of war, and they end up making the exact same problem or decisions that
Hmm.
they swear up and down that they'll never make. And you also get like very much common thing is lack of coordination. And honestly, it's really cool to see people kind of take away from it. It was like, oh wow, given the information I had, that kind of was the best choice I thought I could make. But it turns out, had I known this, I would have made a completely different choice. It's like, well, yeah, that's exactly what this guy did or that guy did in this historical scenario, or in that battle. That's why they made that, is because that's the information they had available to them.
It's
So it kind of gives them a new way to look at things.
it's very humbling. You
Yeah.
think, oh, I know so much and I've been gaming, but once you play the way you guys play Kriegspiel or Kriegspiel period, especially with the umpires of Fog of War, it is a humbling experience. And my wife said to me, she was questioning me because she was kind of watching over my shoulder. And I said to her, this is about as realistic as it gets. And now I understand why they used it, to train the
Hmm.
officers in Prussia starting in 1824 with it. It's priceless as a training tool.
Wow. Well, that's very high praise. And I want to point out that yesterday's game was played using Otto's system. Otto is from Finland. He is one of our master umpires. He wrote his own system with rules for play, which are also available from the International Kriegsspiel Society. You can get them on the Discord. And it's a different scale than the K22 scales. So the two systems don't directly compete with each other. Um, and again, it works so well, and you have good umpires. The IKS, we produce, good umpires that can run good games. We have games every Saturday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So anybody who wants to get involved, do what Vindictus has done. Have the Vindictus experience, right? Just show up and get into the game and have a great time. And yeah, it's really really cool. You
And
can't
there's
get
no
anything like
rules.
it. There's no
There's no
rules.
rules. Absolutely no rules. That's easiest game to pick up and play. Unironically, most realistic experience you'll ever have, easiest time you'll ever have playing too. No rules.
That's
Like,
right.
I know
that's what's amazing.
That's what freaked me out, because I was like, oh, I better have my Kriegsspiel rules, Kriegsspiel rules ready in case I don't want to look like an idiot. And then I was like, wait a minute. And then of course I realized you were playing Otto's version. I was like, this is even better.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
It's so easy to pick up and play. Like, I was
Yeah.
blown away when I first played, because I was like, I remember I had to ask Alex. I was like, where are the rules? You know, because I had the same mindset. You know, it's like, there are no rules. I was like, what do you mean there are no rules? Like,
Yeah.
and then once I played for the first time, I was like, holy shit, there are no rules. Like, all the umpires do it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those guys that are the umpires, they deserve so much kudos, because without them, this couldn't even be possible.
Yeah. Well, there are rules. We just don't tell them to you because
Exactly.
we don't want you to game the system. Because
Doesn't stop me from trying.
that's what that's what sucks about playing with people
Yep,
who have played this game over and over. And I'm talking about any war game out there. You
yep,
know, they say, "Oh, I'll teach you this game. It's a great game." And you go and you play it, and well, this guy has been playing it for years, and he just mopped the floor with you. I want
yep.
everybody to know that not only have I been playing Kriegsspiel for, I don't know, 12, 15 years, I don't know, a long time. And not only have I wrote a rules book, but I also lose every live game that I play. So,
Especially against me.
especially against everyone. A potato could beat me, apparently. But that's what's so cool about it, is that you can play as a newcomer, and an experienced veteran doesn't necessarily have a lot of advantages over you if you know your tactics, and you know how things were in the Napoleonic Wars, the American Civil War. You kind of know more or less what commands you would give in a certain situation. You will fight very effectively and competently in the Kriegsspiel game, and you don't have to worry about it. So,
Yeah, I think one thing that's really interesting is like I would consider myself an above average player. I've been here for a while, but I still on occasion get my ass kicked by new people.
yeah,
Like it happens. Like, people are just like, if you know the time period, that's pretty much all you need to know.
yeah, it's a good
So
lesson in humility.
yeah, I know, right? Still working on that last part, but
Yeah, you are. Yeah,
yeah,
you are.
but yeah, and another thing that's really cool, even if you the only time you really see a difference between new people and veteran people is when you have an entire team of like veterans versus like even if they just have like a mix of veterans and new people. The difference is veterans are able to coordinate and explain what they're doing a lot better just because
Hmm.
they've been doing it more,
Hmm.
and they also have a better like way to gauge mentally how long things will take and approximately what's happening where. That just takes time, and that's really the only time I've ever noticed where like skill really matters. Because say for example you're an above average player and you get stuck on a below average team, your veterancy might matter locally based on what you're able to pull off,
Hmm.
just tactically and even in some cases strategically. But you still have to rely on your weakest link. You're not stronger than your weakest link, uh,
Hmm.
and it really shows. Like, this is a prime example. So it's really great, like having the experienced people kind of show the less experienced people like how to gauge things and like what most often works and what most often doesn't. But nothing's ever guaranteed in this game. A lot of it's like up to chance. You can plan everything perfectly and everything could still go wrong.
Yeah,
You know, Murphy's
absolutely.
law.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the podcast here. I do want to invite everybody to check out our website at kriegspiel.org. We're still doing a lot of work on the resources tab, which is not here at the moment because we have to build that out. But you can join our Discord. Obviously, the podcast is here. You can support us on Patreon. You come here and subscribe to our Patreon, only $5 a month, and it supports all of us, supports the IKS. You can shop and get your merch. We've got blocks, so if you want to create your own set of blocks, we've got everything here. This is our official supplier for Kriegsspiel blocks. And of course, there's our Kriegsspiel merch. You can get the K22 rule set, by the way. You can buy that there. And other things. And yeah.
Like your
So,
mug.
yeah, we got the
Got
mug.
got my own special mug.
Yeah. Did you get it yet, or is it still on a
Oh yeah,
shelf?
I messaged you like as soon as you posted the link, I bought it.
Oh, yeah, I'm waiting for it to be shipped, I guess, as of yesterday. But yes, you're gonna get the Lord Hugs mug, which I customized just for you, sir. So there you have it. We have the Rock Creek mug. I crossed Rock
Classic.
Creek, and all I got was this mug. So yeah, just so people get the joke, and then we'll wrap up the podcast. Is we had a big game back in August of last year called Grand Gettysburg. And this year is Rock Creek. And the umpires ruled that Rock Creek was not fordable, but in reality, Rock Creek is this little teeny tiny meandering
Literally a creek.
ditch. It's a creek
Yeah.
at most. And
I was there. I was one of the people that tried crossing it. They told me not to.
yeah,
Like,
there
and
you
we
go.
went to Google Maps and plopped their little character down and said, "What do you mean we can't cross this?"
Yeah, but the umpire's rulings are final,
Yep.
so it might as well have been the Atlantic Ocean. All right. Well, everybody, I want to thank everyone for watching. We're up against 9 a.m., which is our normal Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel time. But I've actually been on already for an hour, so I think we're going to count this episode for that. Um, and I'll be back next Saturday and Sunday, probably with more Kriegspiel stuff if my schedule permits. Certainly on Sunday for our regular episode. But again, I want to thank you all for being here, for watching the podcast. And again, I want to invite you all to check out Kriegsspiel.org and all the cool things that are on that site and that are coming to that site soon. And of course, join us on our Discord and get in some games. So everybody, Vindictus, Hugs, thank you for being here. Otto, thank you for your commentary on the YouTube stream. And McKay, also, thank you for your commentary in the Discord. And we will see you all on our next adventure. Bye for now.